Oh dear, what can the matter be? Hello everybody, this is Brian O'Haron, back again for another 2 years of Planning for Success. This program will be quarterly. It will be on each quarter, and we will deal mainly with revenue and the possibility of increasing it by a substantial percentage over the years. I will first begin by introducing the program. I have a disclaimer here that says that the data and the comments and views expressed in this program are those of myself, Brian O'Haron, and not to be interpreted as the official information, data, or views of the management of the town of Winchester, unless otherwise stated or indicated. This is a 2009-2011 and administration. It's the new administration, selectmen and Board of Education members and other people. 2009-2011 group. And it's a financial objective review. It'll be on tonight, as you see it, February 24th, 2010. And for anybody who misses the program because they're watching the Connecticut women play basketball or they're flipping around the channels watching other programs, it will be repeated on March 3rd, 2010, March 10th, 2010, and March 17th, 2010 as is. If I get any feedback on the program, I'll let you know what it is at the next quarterly review. The next quarterly review, Planning for Success, will be somewhere around the end of May after the second quarter is over. The early June for the follow-on ones, 2010, and watch for that program. If there isn't much of an increase, then there won't be much of a program. So if there's planning happening and things are actually going well or going poorly, then I'll have the program, I'll bring you up to date. If there's nothing happening, then I'll just probably get on TV and say there's nothing happening, see you in another quarter. It's hard to make this stuff move rapidly. It takes time, and we'll have to give it a shot. Having said that, the agenda for tonight, there are comments, which I'll make in a few minutes. The town of Winchester financial problem, which I've been going over with you now for almost 5 years. 2 years on TV, the rest in various meetings around town. The revenue budget. An approach to a top-down gradual solution to this revenue problem. The previous 10-year revenue financial history. A future 5-year financial objective straw man based upon our past 5-year history. That's included in this 10-year history. A future 10-year financial objective straw man. It's hard to plan 10 years in ahead. That's why I put the 5-year one in. But I took and planned a 10-year one using the history of the last 10 years, which is always the way to do it when you have a blank page. And right now, our 5-year plan, as stated by the Republicans before the last election, was a blank piece of paper. As far as I can see, still is a blank piece of paper, although the last administration was pushing for the Aurora developments up on the corridor. Various things got in the way of that. The previous administration before the Republicans stalled it a bit, in my opinion. The tsunami came, and that caused changes in the DEP and in the Army Corps of Engineers rules and regulations, as I understand it. That didn't help any. We didn't sell some property to the developer that previous administrations had led him to believe that we would. That's was part of the problem. And then, of course, we got hit with the greatest recession since the Great Depression, and we're still in the middle of that. So tonight I'm going to go over some of these numbers with you. And I'll start now with my comments. February 8th, 2010 marks the end of the first quarter of the new administration. And I have been requested by many town folk. I get a lot of people stop me all the time asking for advice and answering questions and asking questions. But town folk have asked me to keep highlighting the urgent need for 5-year objectives for obtaining a significant increase in additional profitable recurring tax revenue each year. The grand list increases most years, and we'll talk a bit about that tonight. But all of the increase is not profitable. If small houses are built and they have children in them, then it's most likely not profitable for many years, any tax coming from that house. And I can explain that a bit later if I get the time. There's also a need for the creation of a town by exception mechanism for managing to achieve each year's objectives and future year's objectives. Once you set these objectives at a high level, you need to have a mechanism for managing them from month to month, quarter to quarter, and year to year to make sure that you increase the revenue profitably for the town. Over the next 2 years, I will attempt to emphasize these needs and report progress or lack of progress on a quarterly basis. I may have a guest from time to time, I may not. Our current 5-year plan continues to be, as I said, a blank piece of paper. Because of the lack of a crystal ball, I will construct straw men for a 5- and 10-year set of revenue objectives using previous 5- and 10-year Town of Winchester averages. The town manager and the financial director will have to coordinate the construction of the actual 5-year revenue and the associated quarterly objectives to support the top-level revenue objectives. Now, I must point out to you, as I said before on the program, politicians don't like to set measurable targets, because if they set quantitative measurable targets, they'll have to meet them. And if they don't meet them, they will be in danger of losing the next election. Businessmen, however, like to set objectives. They like to see into the future, and the current town manager has already expressed his interest in our revenue growth and how we will achieve that. So my guest tonight is again a blank piece of paper that symbolizes the lack of an existing set of 5-year revenue objectives and a mechanism to achieve them. Welcome back, as a guest, blank sheet of paper. Now, I want to say just a bit about the transition here from the town. We now have an acting town manager. I went to see the town manager a few weeks after he was employed. There was every indication that he might want to be the full-time town manager and accept a job in town if he would be allowed to live in his home, which is outside of Winsted right now. So there has been a move to try to change the charter to make it a little easier to employ him as a full-time town manager. Both parties and everybody I talked to in town, including myself, seem to be very impressed with this acting town manager. Not saying the other town managers weren't impressive as well, but we had one resign recently, and we have a new one. His name is Wayne Dove. It's my opinion that this man is very, very well qualified and capable if he doesn't get micromanaged too much by the Democrats in the present majority in the present administration. So the acting town manager, Wayne Dove, is a Winsted native. He was born here. He has a master's degree in business administration from the University of Rhode Island. I'm tickled pink about that because, as you know, I think businessmen should run the town. Said so for many, many years, and can make it happen if they're giving the room to manage. I don't think anybody else on the Board of Selectmen has a business degree in master's degree. I may be wrong, but they certainly don't have one who has the degree, plus all the experience of managing in the financial industry for 30 or 40 years. Got 30 years of banking and finance industry, some of it outside of this country, and he appears to have plenty of knowledge and self-confidence. My fear is that after he's around a while, before this charter change is made, he may become frustrated with the micromanagement that often follows, plagues a town manager, and he might not want to stay. Let's hope he does stay. And if not, then we have to get somebody with equal business experience. Now I'm going to talk a bit about the town financial problem. You'll see a picture of Connecticut magazine. The town manager, when I went to see him, brought up, I went to him to mainly talk about my interest in the growth of the revenue in town in my green papers, but he gave me an article from the Connecticut magazine, and the article was called Rating the Towns that are size 10,000 to 15,000 people. And the article was in a November 2009 edition of this magazine, which you see on the screen. 1 represents the highest and the best rating in this particular article. 23 represents the lowest, not very good rating in this particular article. There were 2 people tied for 22, Plymouth and Winchester, for last in this list. I will now show you the town problem as outlined in this article. If you can come to the stand, you'll see that this comes right out of the article. I don't have time to read the whole article to you. You can pick up the magazine yourself. Call me if you want to see a copy of it. The town of Winchester, town rank, 22 of 22, tie with Plymouth. So we're last as far as rating these towns by this magazine. And most of the information they use in this magazine to rate the towns comes from statistics in the state of Connecticut one way or another. So for education, because of our test scores and various other things, the number of people who go to college from here every year and things like that, there's a whole bunch of criteria that you can find out. We're 18 of 22. 18 of 22. Even though 65% of our budget every year goes to education in our town. In crime, despite an excellent police force, we are 22 of 22. As far as the number of people who commit major and arrested, I guess, for committing major crimes per 1,000 people in town. Again, there's more criteria in the magazine. The economy, our ability to grow our revenue base, and other related criteria. 21 of 22. That's near the bottom. Can't get much less than that. As far as costs, we were in very good shape. We were number 2 of 22. That means this is an inexpensive place to live, and the cost of housing is low, relatively speaking, to the other towns, and the taxes people pay and things like that. So again, you can get the criteria from this magazine. And then leisure, where you'd think we would be high because of the lake and the Berkshires and the surrounds, Lake Winchester and everything else around here, we're 21 of 22. But this criteria includes a lot of things, and it includes the number of theaters and the amount of museums and how much we give to the library, all kinds of things like that. So the whole bunch of criteria here, that would take me quite a long time. But as you can see here, we're not too good a shape. We're 22 of 22, tied with Plymouth. So in every category, we're in dire shape, except that we're an inexpensive place to live, and that may be part of the root of some of our problems because we don't get enough profitable recurring revenue here. Okay, now, again, these are my views tonight, not the views of anybody else. I'm sure a lot of people share them, at least they tell me so. But we need to work towards a solution. So I saw another article recently, it was in the Waterbury Republican, on January 4th, 2010. And this article talked about towns that are growing and adding jobs. Trying to find this article from the Waterbury paper. I don't see it here, but it's all right. The Waterbury Republican American had an article on January 4th, 2010, Keep It Simple and Thrive, by Sam Cooper, one of their reporters, or by somebody who contributes to the magazine. I didn't check on it. But anyway, they had some interesting statistics for us. Now, I just want to paraphrase this by saying that in all these cases, everybody can make excuses for why we are the way we are, or somebody else is the way they are. And that's easy to do. Finding ways to emulate them and finding ways to get them to help us get better ourselves, that's another story. So the growth of total between 2000 and 2008, the growth of the employment in these towns is recorded. Again, these numbers are taken from statistics. Oxford was number 1. Over that, between 2000 and 2008, their employment grew by 49%. And there's a whole lot of reasoning in the article about why they got there. And they're still improving. Bethlehem came in second with 36%. This was Naugatuck Valley region, didn't include Winchester. Cheshire, number 3 with 16%. Beacon Falls, number 4 with 8%. Then there were a bunch in the middle. And until you get to the bottom of the list, which was Southbury, 6% minus. Thomaston, 10% minus. Naugatuck, 13% minus. Watertown, 18% minus. And you can see we're getting into the industrial towns much like Winston and Torrington here. And they're dealing with several problems. But when you read the article, if you do, you will see that in order to attract new business, Oxford, who is number 1, said you have to work with businesses. You have to work in concert with businesses. You have to make it easy for them to come to town. You have to make it a partnership, so to speak, and everybody work together to get this new business in. Watertown, which was the last on the list, said, a person from Watertown that was quoted in the paper said that Watertown was unfriendly. His belief was Watertown was unfriendly to incoming businesses and made it very difficult for incoming businesses to get to town. Therefore, the jobs were decreasing rather than increasing. Now, the town of Winchester has suffered for many years for waiting for things to happen. We don't do much planning by objectives for the next 5 years. We haven't got a clue what we're going to do over the next 5 years. It's kind of a finger in the wind type thing. So we kind of wait for things to happen. Good businessmen don't wait for things to happen. They go out and make things happen for their business. Now, I've always said in the past, 90% of small businesses in this country go broke all the time. But the ones that succeed have objectives to make things happen, and then they manage it to those objectives. And they have the whole company managed to those objectives. And they can't tolerate people who don't march to the same tune in the same direction. So I'm going to go over with you now for a little while what I consider to be a necessary approach towards an eventual solution of this town problem. I tell many people that if it were me running the town, which it isn't, I would go try to hire one of those people that made Oxford a success into our planning job. We have had people in the past in the planning job that worked to try to be friendly with businesses, and we have had people that haven't, same with select people. But I would try to go hire one. If I couldn't hire one, I would go and sit down and talk to them for hours and hours and hours and find out why they were successful. And I might even try to get them to be a consultant to us, or maybe get 2 or 3 of them to be consultants to us. It costs money, so it's not easy to do. But one way or another, we should learn from their experience. I wouldn't bother at all to talk to the ones that are failures. Now, we have 3 approaches here. We can cost cut. You know that's going on. The last 2 budgets have been 0 revenue or have been a 0 tax increase. And tricky on the revenue side. We've had some losses in revenue over the last couple of years. So cost cutting must happen. This program is not going to get much into cost cutting. We have the Taxpayer Association in town. We have the town manager and the management and select people and the Board of Education. They have to worry about the cost cutting. But the town has to worry. The town manager, the selectmen, and with all the help they can get from every other board in town, every other commission in town, including the Board of Education and the superintendent of schools and all, they have to put a plan together to get in more additional, profitable, recurring, yearly revenue increases. Or, as is happening here, or not happening here, a combination of both. We have an imbalance here. We have the Board of Education at 60% of our budget spending and giving raises and increasing unfunded mandates are coming to them, all kinds of things, which I'm not here to defend or argue against. But that's moving in a rapid increase in spending. In my view, town management and the EDC are not moving fast enough. They need to move much faster to get the money, get the revenue that the town and the education people need. Now, the town people often suffer, I've known this for many years, because of the drain on them for the high education costs. I'm not saying they're not worth it. I'm not saying we have to do anything about it. My view is, let's keep on with the management and trying to get the costs, and there's a lot of room for that. You can see a page of that in my green papers, which most of the town agrees with, but we've never been able to make happen. But we need to get more money in to the house so that we can do the things we want to do. So a combination of both has to happen to a certain extent, but it's never balanced. Right now, there's more spending on the educational side, there's spending on the town side, and we don't have enough increasing profitable additional recurring revenue to be able to satisfy that. So I say that the town must construct a 5-year set of financial objectives, which are targets really. This is top-down management, not bottom-up management, top-down management. So we set the targets. And the town manager will sit down with his management and the Board of Education people and the selectmen and especially the finance director and say, what do we need? How much do we need to increase this revenue every year over the next 5 or even over the next 10 years on an incremental basis to make this a viable proposition and get off the bottom of the list, get out of 22nd place. So they need to construct these objectives, and that's very simple. I'm going to go through a way to do that with you now. Targets with revenue increases each year. They have to be each year, and they have to be kind of substantial each year. It can't be a hockey stick type thing. It's got to be a little every year, as we would have gotten had we gotten the major development in the town a few years back. We most likely would be moving ahead in this area, but we're not. And we can't cry over that spilled milk. We got to find another way to do it. And we need to get ideas from everybody in town. As I said to the selectmen in their first meeting this year, you need to get out. You got to find a way to put your plan together. Forget about Brian's plan. Get your own plan together. And everybody will be happy if you will succeed. If they don't succeed, nobody will be happy. So we have to get the increases each year that are enough to solve the town's inflation. Inflation's about 3% a year, average over the last 10 years. Last year was actually down. It was negative, but over the last 10 years, it's been about 3%, and therefore will probably continue to be so, if not more, or a little less for a while we're in the Depression. And then spending needs that we have while balancing the taxpayer's ability and willingness to pay the revenue increase from year to year. This town has a charter that says the taxpayers must agree the budget every year. So if you have a solid plan and you're consistent in executing that plan, it'll be easier to deal with the taxpayer association and the taxpayers. If you don't, it'll be very difficult. We'll give you some examples of that later. So the taxpayer's ability and willingness to pay the revenue increase from year to year for the next 5 or 10 years must contain enough additional, recurring, profitable property or personal property tax revenue. Now, as I say, not everything is profitable. I have a home on Highland Lake. I just recently built a guest house there as well, where I pay taxes and I'll be paying more taxes. That's all profitable to the town because I have no children in the system, in the education system. That's already, I'm past that now. There are many things that are very profitable, but the one that sticks out the most is profitable for the town is in the area of business, employing people and having businesses in town. They pay huge taxes. And also a thing called personal property taxes, which the businesses pay for all the lathes they own, all the trucks they own, all the machines they own. Barbers pay for clippers and combs and all kinds of things. So everybody pays that, and that's quite a bit of our money, and I can show you now where the last year that dropped by a couple $1 million during this recession. So we have to be very careful there. So we need to get that those recurring profitable property taxes or personal property tax revenue up, or we have to have expense reductions if the town is to avoid an average increase in the 4% tax increase that we have averaged over the last 9 years. Yeah, 9 years now we've averaged 4%. Can't go much higher than that on average. You might go another percent on average if you get more wealthy. But you won't find too many towns that average much more than this every year over the last 10 years. So we have averaged 4%. And that's a tough one to beat. So we have to work on the revenue, profitable revenue. Nobody ever used that word. One town manager, a few town managers ago, said to me, Brian, nobody in this town ever mentions revenue. The new town manager is mentioning revenue, and my hat's off to him. Now, the revenue budget major categories. We're going to be talking about those tonight. Here's what they are. These contribute revenue every year, which is enough revenue for to balance the expenditures in the budget of all kinds. Current taxes, that's the taxes paid by all the people who own property, either personal property or dwellings or whatever in the town. And remember, a lot of people in here don't pay any taxes. Like churches don't pay taxes, town buildings don't pay taxes, the best of my knowledge. And tax-exempt organizations don't pay the same taxes, the university, the hospital, things like that. So there's a lot of things in town that don't pay the taxes that we're talking about here. They may pay other taxes, they do help business in town, it's all good stuff, but it's not what I'm talking about on this program. So current taxes that the taxpayers pay are 60% of the budget for 9 and 10, for fiscal 9-10. The state of Connecticut was 30% of this year's budget, fiscal 9-10. So there you go. That's 96% right there of the budget. Past due taxes, there are many people who haven't paid their taxes on time for one reason or another, and we collect from them every year in 9-10, 2% or so. I rounded these numbers off a bit, 2%. And then local revenue, that's revenue we get from permits, fees, and other fees, and some of the things in the town clerk's office and all. That averaged in 9-10, that was 2%. And then the fund balance, we didn't take anything out in 9-10 from the fund balance, which is presently at about $400,000, very low. It should be at about $1.5 million for the size of our budget, according to Moody's and other people. So now I'm going to show you, that's what it was in 9-10 here. Now I'm going to show you a chart, if I got them in the right order here, of the major revenue category averages for each of those categories. What was the average over the last 5 fiscal years? That's fiscal 05, 06 through 09, 10. Now, when business people can't predict the future because they don't have a crystal ball, what they do is they look at averages of the past. You do that in your family. What is my light bill averaged over the last 10 years? And what rate is it going up or down? Or have we added something this year that'll make it be even more next year or for the next 10 years? What is the oil bill averaged over time? What have we done to conserve energy, or do we have to face up to it and pay more over the next 5 years? So we all have this problem. So here's what the numbers are for us, Town of Winchester, by category for the last 5 years. Current tax, that's the money that comes from the taxpayers. Current tax has averaged 3.04% in the last 5 years. But remember, 2 of those years were 0 increase years. And that's what brought this average down to 3 from the 4 it's been over the last 10 years. The state of Connecticut has averaged a 2.2% increase over the last 5 years, although there's some rocky ups and downs in there that I'll show you, I hope, in another slide. For example, one year it's down 4%, another year it's down 10%, one year it's up 20%, that kind of thing. Very hard to plan that way. You kind of got to look at averages, and you got to say this is what it averaged, this is what it's likely to stay with that average unless somebody does something to change it. Past due taxes have come in at the rate of 0.006%, not much. These are more insignificant parts of the budget, but they're still very important. Local revenue over the last 5 years has gone down 6.8%. And the fund balance we've dipped into, we don't dip into it every year, but on average we dip into it over the last 5 years for, I'm sorry, I mean 5 years here, for $117,000 from the fund balance. That's our savings account. And it's meant for use during rainy days, a rainy day account. So now, having seen these averages over the last 5 years by category of the major budget, revenue budget, I've put together a 5-year revenue objective straw man. The reason I call it a straw man is because This is not what I recommend in the budget. This is something to wake everybody up and show them, if we go by the averages of the last 5 years and the last 9 years, these are the kind of things you can expect. Then you can go and try to do something about that. A little difficult to do anything about that for the 10-11 budget, but it's still possible. Not going to get a heck of a big increase in recurring, profitable, additional tax revenue or revenue for the town. Revenue for the town over the next few months, or even over the next year, because last year it went down, and this year it went up a little from the down, but not back to where it was before it went down last year. So now, 5-year revenue objective straw man. Straw man is very important. Don't say, anybody say, this is what Brian recommends. I know the Taxpayer Association will say, I hope he's not recommending that. No, I'm just saying, have a hard look at it, manage it, and get it, and have it wake you up, town, so that you go after, in a more objective, planned manner, future increases in this revenue budget across the categories. And be prepared when one of them drops like a stone, as the state one has done a couple times on us over the last 10 years. So on this one here, we're going to use the last 5-year revenue averages that I just put up for you. So this is this year's budget, 910. I think I'll move this so you can see it a little better. Okay, here we go. Hope you can read it. I had to use a smaller print here to fit it onto one piece of paper for this. So the total revenue budget is TB. So the fiscal year is 910. Connecticut, we got, from current taxes, we got 19,800,000. This is rounded to thousands. From the state, we got 8,950,000. 8,950,000. We got 650,000 from the people that were overdue on their tax payments. Local revenue, we got 669,000. And from the fund balance, we took 0. So our budget was 30,069,000 rounded off. For the next 5 years, using 5-year averages, and here are the averages that I had up earlier, 3.04% for current taxes. State, 2.2 average over the 5 years. People will continue to pay back on their overdue taxes, 0.006% rate. And the local revenue has gone down 6.8%, so it will continue to go down until we see some change in the pattern. And then $117,000 will probably have to be taken out of the fund balance unless we do something to make that not necessary. All right, with that, your 10-11 budget, you'd have to have 20,402,000 in taxes, current taxes. You have to have 9,146,000 from the state, and I can tell you right now that's not likely to happen. But going by averages, that's what you would need. 654,000 from the overdue taxpayers, 624 from local revenue, 1,000, 117,000 from the fund balance, and that would give you a budget of revenue budget of 30,943,000, which is up 2.9% from the 910 budget. And then for the next year, 21,022,000 from current taxes, 9,348,000 from the state. The same sort of amounts up a little bit from those categories, and then you would end up with 31,727,000, or an increase for that year of 2.5%. The next year would be 12-13, fiscal year 12-13, and that would be current taxes, 21 $9,661,000. It would be from the current taxes. It would be from the state, $9,554,000. And then we'd have these smaller amounts increasing or decreasing, whatever it may be here. This is decreasing, that's increasing small numbers. And then 117 from the fund balance. So again, here in 12-13, you're up 5%. Following the same pattern, the year 13-14, you'll be up 2.6% from this year to this year. And in 14-15, you'd be up 2.6%. So as you can see here, we're going to average here about 2.67%, which is close to the 3% we have been over the last 5 years. But this doesn't have a zero budget increase in it, and it doesn't have an exorbitant growth year. So it's more manageable. Now, the first thing that I would do if I were running the town is I would look at this straw man and I would say, holy mackerel, what's really going to happen here? Or what do we think is really going to happen? And I wouldn't look at it through rose-colored glasses. I would look at it through objective pair of eyes. And then I would manage at least the first year's numbers back or forward. If you think you're going to be greater, which I doubt, if you don't think it's going to be greater, then you got to, and I'm sure they're working on it now, but you got to manage it. But you got more time to do 11-12. Planning. You got more time even yet to do 12-13, more time even yet for 13-14, and more time even yet for 15-16. Now, in our lives, people that are down, and I know this won't apply to many of you, but it should apply to all of you, you have to plan to live to be 90 years old with your retirement money, your retirement income. And that includes carrying for inflation over those years. Now, the average man doesn't live that long, and the average woman doesn't live that long. But for financial planning purposes, you have to manage that way. Because you may be the exception, or your spouse may be the exception, and you don't want that to happen. You don't want to end up 80, 85 with no money. So it all has to be planned, and you have to start with objectives, and you have to manage to those goals. Give up things that you might want now for things you may need in the future, that kind of thing. Okay, now I just want to show you quickly the major revenue category average, percent-wise, increase or decrease over the last 9 fiscal years. And I know now that people are probably scratching their heads saying, hey, we can't even manage 1 year. How are we going to manage 5? Yet, how are we going to manage 9? It's like an eternity for this town. 9 years. Well, you know how fast 9 years goes by. My little granddaughter's 1.5 years already. Last time I talked to you, she was just born a year and a half ago when I started my program. So anyway, major revenue category average percent, increase, decrease, last 9 fiscal years. Fiscal 01, 2001, 2002, through fiscal 9-10, 2009, 2010, which is the budget we're in now. Now, let me just say to you that I take all this information from town documents. Any mistakes in interpreting these documents are mine, not theirs. But this is where I take them from. This comes from the financial director, and it's got averages, and it also has the fund balance page, which shows you what the average increase has been in the fund balance over the last 10 years, and it has a gross and it has a net. Now, I want to make one point here before I go into these numbers. The fund balance, the grand list, when they take the grand list and they do reval, which happens every 5 years now, the town doesn't make a penny from reval. Matter of fact, they spend money to get the revaluation taken by the company that does it. I don't know, it cost $100,000 last time or something like that. But they don't make any money on reval because the mill rate will go down to balance for that. And it's a long, complex story, but basically our grand list only grows at about 0.9% a year over the last 10 years. And we just got some numbers out today which show us much less than that. It's 0.13 this year. Last year it lost, went backwards. This year's small increase has not brought it back to where it was last year when it took a dip down on average. So we have a long way to go here on getting this revenue in. So now I'm going to just say, if you want to take a longer look, you're going to get into kind of the numbers I mentioned earlier in the program. Current tax paid for by us, the taxpayers, 4% average over 9 years. 4%. That's not bad. You can't really blaspheme, which I've heard in the past, the Taxpayer Association, because they've been hanging in there, keeping people honest, and making sure that average didn't go out of proportion to what the community could afford. I'm not saying they do everything right. I'm not saying they're a check and balance. And the fact that the charter forces the town to go to the taxpayers to agree the budget every year is a check and balance put in by our forefathers, whether we like it or not. So that's what we've averaged over 9 years. We come down over the last 5 years because of the 2 0 years. Matter of fact, there in the 9 years, there were 3 0 years altogether. The state of Connecticut has averaged 2.1%. Past due taxes, 2.2%. Local revenue, minus 2.2% over 9 years on average. That's increase or decrease. It's not, that we got that. It's just, we still get it. It's just not increasing at more than that rate. It's actually decreasing by 2.2% a year over the last 9 years. And over the fund balance, a little more over 9 years, we've taken $156,000 from that each year over the last 9 years. So, that's $1.5 million or so, when you multiply. So, all right. So now let's just go through quickly this. And this is a straw man again. Not Brian's recommendation, just a tool you use to face the facts and make decisions. So you go ahead and you see the same sort of thing over the next 10 years. This is going to be a forecast over the next 10 years using 9-year averages. And this is this year, 9-10, same numbers we had up for the last comparison. These are the percents for each category, plus or minus. And then we go through and we multiply, and we multiply this by 1.4, 4%, and we get 20,592,000 in current taxes if we were to use that format. State, 9,138,000. Past due taxes, 664,000. Local revenue, 655,000. And fund balance, 156, which would take us to 31,205,000, rounded off. And that would be about 3.8% more than the 9-10 budget. Not likely to happen. Now, the town has to find out why is it not likely to happen. If any of these categories don't come in like on those averages, it isn't going to happen. Some might be more, some might be less, bringing this number to more or less. Then it's got to get past the taxpayers at the annual budget meeting and the annual budget referendum. Then we go to 11-12 and so forth. And you see where the average, because you're using the same multipliers all the time, comes out to be about 3.3%. If we go with 9-year averages for the next 9 years, the last 9-year averages for the next 9 years. So this gives you something to chew on, something, a straw man to look at, to chew on, to talk to people about, to try to calibrate and get into shape. Now, once you do that, if I were me, And I had objectives like this. These are top-down objectives. Then you got to go make them happen every year. And you got to start planning now for the 5th year, the 4th year, the 3rd year, the 2nd year, and the 1st year. It's kind of late for the 1st year, but maybe we've done some planning. I don't think so. I don't expect much of that to happen. I think in the state, we're probably even in worse trouble. We got 4% less in 9-10 than we did the year before, and the year before we got 10% less than the year before, and the year before that we got like 19% more. Now, if I went to you and said, I know you're making an average of $50,000 a year and have been for 10 years in your job, and I'm going to give you a $25,000 bonus this year, so you'll be making $75,000 this year. Well, I advise you not to build it into your future planning, because you might not get that bonus next year or the following year or the following year or the following year. So you have to be very careful when the government gives you, or the taxpayers give you more money, a big amount in a year, because you might have lean years following that. And in our relationship with the state has been up and down. And the same with the local taxpayers, up and down. We'll go up the state 10% one year and then start to go down. And then we'll go up a big percentage and then we'll go down. So it requires a lot of planning on the use of that. I call the state money the sword of Damocles hanging over the town of Winchester's head. Because when people get it one year and they get a big increase, they assume they're going to keep getting that big increase. Or it's at least going to stay the same. And of course that doesn't happen. Sometimes they don't get the increase, and sometimes it goes down, and it goes down by a big lump at times. So if we follow this. Now, the other thing I want to say is that you have to let everyone know what the objectives are, the whole town, everybody. That'll be positive, even for people who want to come to town. That'll be positive, because they'll see that you're trying, you got a plan, you're working on it, and you're reporting progress every 3 months against it. And the other thing you have to do, and this is kind of Harvard Business School rules, is you have to review every quarter these plans. The town manager, selectmen, you sit down and you review these plans and you say, what action needs to be taken? Mainly the town manager and the Board of Education to get to live with this, either by getting more revenue in or cutting expenses. And how can we avoid doing that next year and the year after and the year after? And we don't want to be in a position where when the state drops us by 10 or 20%, we're stuck. And we go into panic mode, which we're in now and have been for the last couple of years. Blaming everybody, all that kind of thing. But they have to review it every quarter and every year and make it happen. They have to make decisions where necessary to make all this happen. And that's the hard part. So what we're saying here is that town management needs to be measurable. They need to have a high-level plan of objectives. You don't always know when you make these objectives exactly how you're going to achieve them. You got to have some idea how you're going to achieve them, and you got to have a plan to go do that. And I'll use an example of any of your children or my children when they're born. You know you want them to go to college or to get a trade, a good trade, which is going to cost money one way or another. But you always don't know which trade, and you don't know which college, and you don't even know which subjects they're going to study. But you start saving the money and put it in the bank, or investing it, or earning more so you can afford to save money. That's what we have to do as a town. And we have to let everybody know and get everybody in the same direction. Now, I just want to say one thing in the last few minutes we have. All the other things that are happening in town are great. They're wonderful. POCD, Plan for Downtown Main Street, Friends of Main Street, everything everybody's trying to do, Fred Newman doing things for the senior citizens, that's all wonderful. We should keep doing that. But that's not the answer to our problem. That's bottom-up managing. That's bottom up. You've got to start at the top. You've got to say, what do we need to run this town in a balanced manner, and how are we going to get it? And it's got to be done with numbers, and it's got to be done because numbers are what we have here in this budget. And it's got to be done in a way that it's planned for at least 5 years, if not more. Some things might take 10 years, but you know, we got to have enough each year while we're waiting for this 10-year stuff. And all the other things, POCD, downtown Main Street, they're tools. They're tools to help you achieve these objectives. Development corporation, these are good tools, but they're not an end in themselves. The end in itself are these objectives. What does we need to be financially as a town? And what do we need to do to get there each year for the next 5 years? What are the targets we need to achieve? And what are the sub-objectives we need to meet each objective? For example, get 2 factories in town that employ 100 people apiece in the next year, or the next 2 years, or the next 3 years, or get 1 a year for the next 3 years. And then go do it. And get it done. Having a website, that's a tool. Go ahead and have a website. But that's not the answer to the problem. The answer to the problem, as you read in this article in the Republican, is to get things more friendly. We got school grades that are scaring people away. I talked to one ex-member of the EDC leader over many years, and he said test scores are very important to industry. And I've said in my past on this program that whenever I moved around the world or from city to city, I got to the best schools and I traveled the hour or 2 to work every day. Whatever it took to get my kids in good schools is what I did first. And then I worked around the problem from there. Okay, that's it for tonight. This program will be repeated for the next 3 weeks on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Please watch it. Tell your neighbors to watch it. Everybody watch it. And you won't all agree with me. There will be pushback. There'll be a lot of people who say all the reasons it can't be done. But I can tell you, the successful businessmen and successful athletes all have objectives and goals to meet. And if they meet them, they win. If they don't meet them, they fail. Thank you very much.